Married at First Sight, Season 14, Episode 5. We are moving on to Jasmina and Michael. Look at my description box for the other videos. But let me get right to it. Every video, I like to give you an update on where I stand with these couples. Last week with Jasmina and Michael, I said I was getting very, very nervous about these two, and I was sounding the alarm. Well, let me tell you where I am today. The alarm is full on, and it's a full 5-alarm fire. And at this point, I'm evacuating the house. I'm actually done with the Jasmina. And I'm evacuating. The fire, the smoke, everything is too much. I'm overcome by it, and I am evacuating. I am starting to get vibes from Jasmina, and I know some of you guys are going to be mad when I say this, of a mini Alyssa 2.0. I already told you I was feeling uneasy about how I saw Alyssa and Jasmina getting a little bit too close on the honeymoon. Alyssa was always up underneath Jasmina. They're sitting together, they're talking. And I started saying to myself, I don't know who could be friends with Alyssa the way that she treats people, but I'm starting to figure out that Jasmina is not too far behind. I am starting to get, I'm not going to say she's a narcissistic behaviors from Jasmina. Hear me out. This is what I don't like about Jasmina. One is she never admits anything she does wrong. And if you guys want to challenge me on this, drop down in the comments and tell me the number of times Jasmina has admitted anything that she's done wrong. Because she has pointed out plenty of times what Michael has done wrong. And I'm not saying he hasn't done those things wrong. But Jasmina likes to concentrate on what Michael does wrong, not what she does wrong. That's the first problem I'm having with her. Then what she does is, based on what Michael does wrong, she justifies it. She justifies her response to it. And oftentimes her response is rude, it's crude, it's forceful, it's argumentative, it's combative, it's a lot of things. But let me tell you what it isn't. It isn't sweet, it isn't forgiving, there's no mercy, there's no grace, there's no understanding. Okay, so we're not going to talk about did Michael do something wrong, because yeah, he does do something wrong. But Jasmina's response is outsized to what Michael has done wrong. And she doesn't admit anything that she's done wrong. Jasmina doesn't seem to have a grasp on who she is. Just like Alyssa walks around talking about how nice she is. This is how Jasmina views herself. She doesn't really see. She needs a mirror. And maybe this is because she hasn't been in any relationships. Because let me tell you something, relationships hold mirrors up to you. Because when you're just living by yourself, you can look in the mirror and see your own reflection and you just think you're great. But once you get in a relationship, a mirror gets held up to you. It's a different kind of mirror. And Jasmina has never been in a relationship. So she might not have never had no mirror put up in front of her, but she needs one because she doesn't see anything wrong with herself, and that's a problem. Even in the beginning of the episode, when he brought coffee to her, like I said, he brought coffee to her and he says, oh, hey, you know what? I'm going to make you like coffee. Jasmina was quick on the trigger. It's not that I don't like coffee. I just don't like the way you make it. Boom. That's what I'm talking about. It's the way you handle things. Now, when Michael came in and says, I'm going to make you like coffee, if I'm sitting next to my husband and my husband comes in the room and says, hey, I'm going to make you like coffee, my response to my husband is like, I do like coffee. I just like it with cream and sugar. That's completely different from saying, I do like coffee, but I just don't like the way you make it. That's a whole nother person. I'm telling you, Jasmina is something else. She likes to take pieces of information, just like Alyssa took pieces of information from the friends. Jasmina has taken this information from the sisters when they start talking about how Michael may see the negative or the realism, whatever you want to call it. And sometimes he sees that first. So what Jasmina does is she's like a dog on a bone. When she sees it happening or she sees it coming, she chomps down on it and she bites hard on it. And to be honest with you, sometimes I believe she blows it out of proportion. It's almost she's seeing things that aren't there. So the very thing she's accusing Michael of, she actually does it, which is, like I'm telling you, this is narcissistic behavior because there's hypocrisy in it. The very thing you're complaining about from another person, you actually do yourself. So then Michael starts trying to open up and be vulnerable and talk about things. And here's another part. They say Michael isn't vulnerable. He doesn't open up. But to be honest with you, he's actually the one that sort of initiates conversations to try to work things out. It's not Jasmina. Jasmina sits over there with her mouth poked out, and she doesn't want to talk about anything. She just wants to be mad. And Michael is actually the one that comes in and say, hey, I noticed a change in your behavior since the wedding. Do you want to talk about it? It seems like there's been a little distance between us. He's opening up the conversation calmly and saying, let's have an adult conversation about it. He starts talking about, I know I'm not the most talkative. And he starts talking about some of the things that he knows are some of his not so great traits. But this also tells me that Michael knows what his weak points are. He knows the parts that he's not good at. And the reason he knows it is because he has listened to people in the past. Maybe ex-girlfriends, he's heard it from family members, he's heard it from sisters. But Jasmina, has Jasmina told us anything that she's heard from an ex-boyfriend or a family member or anybody about who she should be different? No, we don't hear anything about that. What she does is she takes the parts of Michael that he knows and we now know are his weak points, and she exploits them. Let me tell you, this is not the way that you make a person become vulnerable. When a person shares with you their weaknesses, their vulnerabilities, and then you take those weaknesses and vulnerabilities and use it as a weapon against them, that is how you shut people down. And that is what Jasmina does. She takes Michael's weaknesses and vulnerabilities, even when he opens up, and she then uses them as a weapons and beats him over the head with it. He ain't gonna never open up to you. So they start getting to this silly argument about him being in his head and him overthinking things, because he is overthinking things, because he's nervous. He's nervous because he knows he has messed things up in the past. He's nervous because he knows he's done things wrong in the past. And so now he's trying to go slow. He's overthinking things because he doesn't want to keep making the main missteps. But instead of Jasmina seeing the reason why he's overthinking things, because he's really trying to not upset her, she looks at it and goes, you're overthinking things. You're overthinking it. Well, that's not the way you get a person to stop overthinking things, Jasmina. When you want a person to stop doing a behavior that's, maybe causing problems in the relationship, you don't then start beating them over the head with it. You actually are supposed to comfort them. You're supposed to reassure them that the things that are worrying them, which is making them overthink, they don't need to be worried about. But Jasmina doesn't do that. She inflames it. She pours gasoline on the situation. So then she just keeps bringing up what the sister said. She just keeps bringing it up over and over again. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's like a dog on the bone. When is she going to get to something else besides saying, stop overthinking, Jasmina is a mean girl. And I'm going to tell you, they tell another story on the boat where they go to, and they start talking about who's ever been to jail. And Jasmina went to jail because she had a fight in high school. I'm telling you, she's a fighter. To go to jail over a fight, you know how bad that fight had to have been to go to jail over it and do community service? So Jasmina starts going on talking about that Michael disrespected her because they had gotten to, an argument off camera. And I have a word for Jasmina. You get respect when you give respect. And I have seen plenty of things from Jasmina, to be honest with you, where it's disrespectful the way she talks to Michael. I don't care if he was overthinking things or if he was being negative. It doesn't mean that you have to be disrespectful. And this is the problem I have with Alyssa. I don't care if you don't like Chris, but you don't have to be disrespectful. You cannot like a person and still be respectful. And Jasmina, I'm telling you, she's disrespectful. And the other reason I know Jasmina likes to fight is because when they were arguing and Michael tried to tone it down, Michael says, you know what? Well, I guess we're just different in that respect. And you know what Jasmina said? No, we're not different. Well, you are different, Jasmina. So she's so into the fight, she didn't even hear what Michael said. Michael basically relented. He basically says, I understand, I agree, we are different in that respect. But Jasmina still wanted to fight. And she said, no, we're not different. She didn't even hear the conciliatory speech of Michael and saying, you know what, I'm going to let it go. She didn't hear it because what she is in, she's in the fight. And this is when she goes back to this where we're just going to have to agree to disagree. This is where it all ends because Jasmina doesn't give up any ground. And I'm telling you, these are traits of a narcissist. I've been around them. I know what they do. And Jasmina is starting to show a lot of traits of it. I'm not going to call her a full-blown narcissist, like I said, but she exhibits a lot of the behavior. And even in the end, they're talking about this apology and Jasmina doesn't want to give the apology. of the way that she so-called interrupted Michael on the boat. She felt he interrupted her. And it is true. I don't think that she interrupted Michael, but it was the way that Michael perceived it, which, I think he perceived it wrong. She didn't. So then what she felt was because she didn't interrupt him, she didn't want to give an apology for it. You know what? I'm not going to get into that because that's immature. That's very immature. The way they're both handling this is showing immaturity on both parties' part. And the other part about Jasmine, she doesn't know how to apologize. She doesn't know how to issue an apology because one is she doesn't think she's done anything wrong, and she's not willing to admit it. And even if she doesn't think she's done anything wrong, she still can't issue an apology. How many of us have issued apologies even though we didn't think we did anything wrong? We issue the apology because we want to bring the temperature down in the room. We want to move on, and we don't want to spoil a relationship. Where Jasmine is not willing to do that. She's willing to spoil the relationship. She's willing to blow it up. And in fact, she said in this episode, she not only doesn't want to be in the same room with him. She doesn't only not want to be married to him. She doesn't want to be in the same room. How did we get here? How did we get here, Jasmina, so fast? How did we get here? And like I said, this is this overblown reaction to things. She says she came to that conclusion because Michael was rude to her, and I guess he elevated his voice and he said all these rude things to her, and so that's how she came to the conclusion she doesn't want to be married to him. But you know what? We never saw that scene. We never saw the scene where Michael blows up at her. And to be honest with you, all the other scenes that we've seen with Michael, even though he claps back and he says things, he hasn't raised his voice. He has been calmed. And to be honest with you, he has been the adult in situations trying to temper it down, trying to leave it alone. And it has been Alyssa who has inflamed the situation. So in this particular case, when when Jasmina has told us what Michael has said and the way he spoke to her, I'm gonna wait till I see it, because one thing I know about people with narcissistic behavior is they start stories in the middle. They don't tell you the real stories. So you start with their version. So of course, when Jasmina sits there and said, "Oh, he was rude to me, and I'm not gonna accept disrespectful behavior," you know who that sounds like? Alyssa. And we didn't see anything from Chris that was disrespectful. But they always talk about how they're the victim, they're disrespectful. I'm starting to pick up vibes from Jasmina. Until I see Michael raise his voice and get loud, which I haven't seen, I'm not believing you, Jasmina. I think this might be another situation where you have elevated the disagreement to another level, because I think Jasmina is argumentative and combative. In the end, they go through this whole tip. And so Michael, one reason I give Michael a little bit more points is because what he said was, in the end, he says, you know what, maybe I did see something that wasn't there. And so even though I want you to give me a certain type of apology, I'm going to go ahead and I accept your apology as it was given to me. I'm not going to hold out for another apology. And you know what Jasmina said? It wasn't good enough. She was still mad. So even when Michael went back and said, hey, you know what, I'm going to accept your apology, you know what Jasmina went? No, now she's got to go back to the original of how it happened. Like I tell, Jasmina can't drop a bone on the ground. She can't drop it and leave it there. I know why Jasmina has never been in the relationship, because Jasmina has a lot of problems that a lot of men wouldn't want to put up with. Her red flags, this 5-alarm fire that I've been talking about, I'm evacuating. I'm out the house. I'm not saying I'm not going to go back in, but you know what? This house, I think, might be a lost cause, and it's probably just going to burn down to the ground.